Hello, thank you so much for coming to the Sashiko Live Streaming. This is Atsushi, and today's Thursday night, and I will, I will talk about Sashiko while doing the Sashiko stitching. Sakura is moving somewhere. Did I bring any questions? Just a few things. I'm sorry, just a few things. First is okay. Okay, before I start stitching, I would like to talk about the Sashiko gathering, online Sashiko gathering next week. After this live streaming on Thursday, let's say that I will finish it on 10:30 in Eastern Time PM, and after that, following that, we will have the gathering. It's kind of similar to the Sashiko live streaming as you watched today, but it's more like the Zoom meeting gathering up to talk about Sashiko or ask me questions. Not in person, but you don't have to write the comments. You can join that Zoom, and it's free. And I'm not organizing it, by the way. I'm not the one who organized it, but there's going to be the person who is organizing this, and you can get a ticket. You can sign up for this from the link on the description. It's the givebutter.com Sashiko gathering. We will send the link to those who sign up for this link, or the one who sign up with the Prum studio. That's the studio that she's gonna be managing. So if you have signed up for this already last month, you will most likely receive it sometimes next week. If you're not 100% sure, if you could just sign up for the give butter. I can probably make sure to send that as well. So it's gonna be after this live streaming next week, next Thursday. It's gonna be probably 1 hour, 2 hours. Last time was about 2 hours, and let's see how it's gonna go. This is our second time to offer that, so it might be not the best thing to do. I mean, it might not be as organized as I would like to, but let's see how it's gonna go. Hello. And that was the announcement. And besides that, I will talk about... I did not bring any topic today, right? Did I bring any topic? Announcement for the English gathering? No. I did not bring any topic, so I wrote down something I have to do. If you have any questions about Sashiko story, not the tutorial, not the technical questions, not the webinar. So if you could share some questions regarding the Sashiko story, not the Sashiko technique, that'd be great. Okay, I will switch the camera. Oh. I hope this camera is not bad. Just a second, okay? Wait. Whew. It's always messy on my table, which I do not show. I really don't like showing, so... Phew. Okay. I was working on something completely different, so I will go back to this, which I should probably cover this. Just a second, okay. I will just go back to this one. I was working on the quilting. I'm working on the quilting right now. I don't know if we can call this quilting, but it has a layers of, at least 3 layers, right? Like the front fabric, batting inside. I have to do either some kind of edging, I think, finishing I have to do, but front, and then there's batting inside, and I'm stitching through. Anyway, I will be teaching in the QuiltCon 2023. Thank you so much for thanks to the Modern Quilt Guild having me again. But this is my 3rd year to join that as a faculty, so I would like to try my understanding of Sashiko there. Sort of my understanding of quilting from the Sashiko practitioner. There are a lot of interpretation or analysis. There's a lot of information you can find from quilter's perspective to understand what Sashiko is. But not many Sashiko artisans jump into the quilting, which I can explain why. I probably can't explain why, but so it has been a big challenge for me to make one. And Keiko, my mother, does not probably feel comfortable making one. Anyway, I hope that I can submit this quilting. I should be able to finish it very soon, so I will try to submit it. I don't know if it's gonna be for the judge or just for the fun. I don't know how it's gonna go, but let's see. But yeah, I am doing something. But I cannot do this on this live streaming because I don't want to make mistakes on that kind of quilting. Wait, like any project for that matter, I don't want to make a mistake. So well, thank you so much for coming. I'm sorry, I was not really well prepared, so I'll start doing that now. I have to be honest. I have to be very honest. I was watching the Netflix right before this. My daughter went to bed pretty early today, so I had little time to watch the Netflix, and I kind of forgot about to join that on time. So, oh, this is not one block. So I don't know if, again, I do not know if I can call this quilting, but there is no concept of block. So in the quilting, you have to make sort of the block patterns, and I did not make that. Which I probably can talk about the difference between quilting and Sashiko for that. Many people are probably wondering what is the difference between those. And quick answer for that question is there's no such a thing as difference. It's both needlework. And there's not that big difference, but I'm curious which people or professions would traditionally repair their clothes using Sashiko. My question is a result of another question. Did Odon people wear kimono? Those are two questions. Well, by the way, thank you, Helen. Professionally, I have to define what professionally is first, but if you're talking about profession as the somebody who makes money or who makes living out of Sashiko, traditionally speaking, there were nobody who was making living out of doing Sashiko as the profession. So they did not repair any clothes for somebody else for the money. So it was very personal things to do. So in other words, many Japanese, or I don't want to say every single Japanese, but many women had to do that. So it was not something you feel comfortable outsourcing to the others. It's like washing the dishes. As I always use the analogy of washing the dishes, you can wash the dishes, right? You can also outsource it, but it's too ordinary for the Japanese to ask that repairing to somebody else. And there are, of course, professional people who repair the clothes or who mend. And they don't call their job as Sashiko, they're more like repair people. And it is kind of disrespectful to them to call their stitching or to their work Sashiko, because Sashiko is more ordinary practice and what they do is more professional. So there's a huge difference in between those two. And I follow some of those repair profession, but their goal is to repair, not to make the repair visible. To make it, their goal is to make the clothes before the damage. So their goal is to make the damage invisible, which we follow that too. But Sashiko was not a profession. That's why I keep saying like Sashiko as the mending is very, very, very strange. Mending is a very important part of Sashiko, but Sashiko is not the mending technique that we practice. So there should be name for those repairing. We do have tsugihagi, shuri, nuno no hoshu. There are some names for that. Somebody might romanticize that again, but those are not fancy words as same as Sashiko doors or the word that we use in the daily life. And there are those professions. The numbers are probably decreasing because of the this fashion trend difference, but there are still people like that. And the second question is, did ordinary people wear kimono? And that we have to define what kimono is. Kimono, if you follow some of the textile culture in Japan, many people explain this, but kimono is not really a specific wear. Kimono means that it's these things to wear. We write down even thing like kiru means the wear, mono means thing. So kimono itself means things to wear. So there's a lot of ramifications under one category. So those people who had to practice Sashiko were not wealthy enough to wear the kimono you have in your mind. We call those jacket or those clothes kimono, probably. They have their own name as well. But it's more like something to wear. And something we can imagine right now, or something we can get from the used market, or something we use, something the Japanese we wear, something the Japanese wear in today's celebration or some special occasions. Those are kimono, very kimono-like, and that's the kimono we can imagine right now. And they are not worn by those who practice Sashiko. So they did not have to mend it. They didn't even know how to mend it. They did not even know how to wear those things. And those jacket those jacket we wore among Sashiko people are called either noragi or samue. Those are two, or monpe. There are many names for those things, and yeah, I think that's. Japan had also the hierarchy. It's like, ranks. Not everybody could wear the fancy kimono as we imagine. So most of the ordinary people, they had to wear something very, very ordinary, which they did not even try to preserve. And Sashiko is the practice for that. There are a lot of culture, there's a lot of tradition, art, stitchery, practice, you name it. There's a lot of practice with a name, their own name, to respect their each techniques and techniques and style. That's why I say that, like, romanticizing the word only Sashiko is a little too shallow to explain the Japanese stitchery. Sashiko is a very big part of Japanese stitchery, but it is not equal to the Japanese stitchery. In order to explain all of the Japanese stitchery, we have to talk about the Japanese embroidery, which is huge field, which I cannot even speak on behalf because I know nothing about those things. And also we have to talk about the Japanese kimono making. It's more like a craftsman, and they have their own structures and even school for that. You have to go through the school to become the person who makes kimono, like general kimono, many kinds of kimono. It's a little different from the tailoring in the Western style. And then Sashiko, there's no really the school structure or system for that. So we are very much talking about one very specific small category of Sashiko, and even my Sashiko is very small specific place. I teach Sashiko, but I cannot teach the whole picture of Sashiko because there are many kinds of Sashiko as well. And that's why it's very important to learn from somebody who knows what they're talking about. So if they know what is the topic, what is the theme, what is the Sashiko they're talking about, then it's good. Unfortunately, probably not. I watched the Japan produced special about Sashiko that was rediscovered on Zokin from around on Old House. They also had a picture of old boro that had obviously old, worn, maintained for use. Yeah, it was very orderly, so many orderly house had it. Some kept it, some didn't. So it's quite interesting to see how ironic it is. Those people who did not want to practice Sashiko did not leave anything behind because that's not what they wanted to do for their kids. Who did not think that much could leave some of the stuff that we can find today. But it's not a matter of good or bad, it's just a matter of history. We have one history and there are many stories around it. So as long as we know that there are stories behind it, I think we're okay. We are not okay when they ignore those stories, but that's something I have to fight back. At this moment, I don't have to be that direct. I can make little small complaints here and there, but it is not my intention to make an enemy, specific enemy, in public, so. In fact, I don't want to make any enemy. I want to make friends, but I want to make friends who I can talk on the same level. For some reason, like when I talk to, when I used to talk to those people who teach Sashiko in English, they start defending themselves that their knowledge is not wrong. I'm not asking to defend that. But for some reason we end up with a discussion that they're not wrong. They don't really point it out that my Sashiko is wrong, but for some reason they end up with talking about how valid their Sashiko can be. And my point is not, it's not my interest to point it out. But I think that's the sort of the side effect of using English to discuss about it, because when we talk about English, we kind of tend to make an answer, or the discussion is always, not always, but discussion tends to be sort of the argument to find the answers. Well, then I stopped doing that. It's too much stuff, too much energy to even read it they're defending, because that can be very long. The lady that found them carefully took them apart to discover the stitching pattern inside. Wow. Many people did that kind of thing, and my family is one of those, which was about 50 years ago, 60 years ago. Wait, 1965. Ooh, 35. Yeah, 50, 60 years ago. And there are still people doing the same thing, I guess, because we have to kind of learn from the things left behind. Ideally, of course, it would be nice if we could learn from somebody alive, but that's not the major case. That's not the case. That's not the common case. As the result, we have to kind of learn from the remaining that they left behind. I was lucky to have many teachers around when I was a child, but that's just very fortunate to have it. In many places in Japan, they are reviving Sashiko. They did revive Sashiko, and they are reviving Sashiko, and they will be reviving Sashiko here and there, probably with different names. But so that's the very ordinary part of Sashiko. And there are a little bit of distinguishment. Like, I always say that the Japan. Let me rephrase that. Being Japanese is very important. Like, being able to read, being able to speak Japanese language is very important to understand Sashiko, right? I often say that. It does not mean that you have to learn Japanese to practice Sashiko. Again, please don't get me wrong. You can always enjoy Sashiko as much as you can, as you wish, as long as you are just enjoying Sashiko for yourself or within the friends or family. If you start teaching Sashiko on behalf of Sashiko, you have to really start trying hard. One of the criteria is to be able to read Japanese, or sort of be Japanese for that matter. You don't have to get a citizenship, but be Japanese to understand expectation. But it does not mean that all Japanese are qualified to do so too. It's too violent to say that. And the more I talk about Sashiko with the other Japanese Sashiko practitioner, or those who enjoy Sashiko, or even who like Sashiko, there are kind of significant, quite big gap between those who practice Sashiko and who likes Sashiko. There are a very big gap between those Sashiko collectors or researchers and also somebody who stitch. Difference between the researcher and practitioner, it can be pretty big, and it's probably the same in many cultures. But those who publish the book, I would like to learn from them. They're not here much, but I wonder how many people are stitching a lot. For that, I really value those who stitch today. And there's so many people who are stitching right now at this moment in any form. It doesn't have to be the Sashiko we practice. It can be any form of Sashiko or any other form of Sashiko, and I think those are the people who I would like to share my joy. Sorry. Ay. I think that's the critique, and then critique? Do we say critique? Critique. there are always people who criticize the things, which is they are very important to sustain the culture. At the same time, there are also the people who practice that. And for now, because I was always the one who criticized Sashiko from outside. I am very much in the mood of talking to somebody who actually stitch. And I hope you're one of those. I mean, this live streaming or my YouTube channel or even Instagram does not probably make sense at all if you don't stitch. Probably if one is just collecting Sashiko or just, try to make money out of Sashiko, borrow, or collecting, borrow, not stitching at all, it might be too uncomfortable to follow. Because I kind of write the stories based on the expectation that many people are stitching. I am not saying that everybody has to be stitching behind the screen. And, there's no problem at all. There's no problem. It's not a matter of good or bad that either they're stitching or not. But my point is that I share my stories based on the fact that the audience are also the people who stitch. Again, if they want to just, read my Sashiko Stories as the story, that's perfectly fine too. That's perfectly fine, and I actually appreciate that too. But I just want to make it might be too idealistic, and it's probably not going to happen. But I want a Sashiko stitcher to be most influential in the culture of Sashiko. Right now, probably the person who has the strongest impact or influence in the Sashiko field are teachers or collectors of Sashiko, or somebody who has already fans or followers or audience from their previous project. Jumping into Sashiko or kind of boring Sashiko for the moment. There's nothing wrong with that, and we get benefit out of those things too. But if Sashiko will keep this form as the trend, or even bigger frame as the culture, I would like the stitches to be the center of the influence. And which is very, 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 very idealistic, because usually it's not going to happen. Historically speaking, that's not going to happen. But it's my wish. Probably we may be able to see that in the internet society. But I think it's how natural it can be too. And that's that's another reason I'm not worried about Sashiko in Japan, because I met so many people who stitch Sashiko either with a voice or without voice, either with the stories or, well, they all have stories, either they have willingness to share or not. So I'm not really worried about Sashiko in Japan, and that's, some people may disagree with that, but I am not. But I'm greatly, that means that comparing to the Sashiko in Japanese and English, I'm pretty worried about Sashiko in English. It's much, much faster than I thought. The change itself is very, very, very fast. Anyway, Sorry, it took like a very, very spin off from Helen's question. Thank you for the question, Helen. So the question was about Sashiko. Was there any professional Sashiko stitchers who repaired this Sashiko? No, there were not. So it was not something to do for others. It was more like very domestic, more private things to do. Do people wear kimono? Did ordinary people wear kimono? The kimono's definition is quite difficult, so it depends on what kind of kimono they wore, but they were wearing some kimono, but not the probably kimono we imagine now today. This will not be kimono. If you find this kind of kimono, like many people will probably find this beautiful, right? Which I don't know. Which I don't know if I'm gonna agree or not. This is the scarf I'm using this winter, probably. Mainly. I made it last winter, and I've been wearing that. Has been getting pretty cold. So I'm wearing it every time I go outside, and then this is the scarf that my daughter took it from my neck. Daddy, it's so cold, and why don't I have the scarf? Well, first, you didn't prepare that. Second, why do I have to give you my scarf? But it's okay, I'm the father, so if she says something, I cannot resist. Anyway, this will never have a name for kimono, even if I make a kimono out of this kind of fabric. That's a little too broken. And I think many Japanese kind of knows that. It's kind of interesting, but I'm kind of waiting to see that somebody may cross the line soon or later, or it's just might be the one who it might be just me who has not found those, but not many people. Like, I have not seen any the kimono we have in our mind with borrow patches. I might just have been blocking those images, but it's kind of not okay. It's not kind of, it's very not okay to kind of mix those two, kimono and borrow. Like, borrow is a jacket, and there's a jacket for that, and it's perfectly fine, but that does not look like the kimono we wear. If you imagine the borrow jacket, it's not the kimono we wear, and there's no kimono which looks like borrow. I cannot just resource the image yet, and those are two separate things that they shouldn't be mixed up. And although the word kimono sashiko borrows are very used in the the casual way, but I have not seen, like, I have not seen any kimono with using this kind of fabric. Textile style. Style, not the fabric, style. There are jackets, like, just big jacket for that, but it's very interesting too. And one day probably somebody's gonna do it. But it's really interesting if they are using the word sashiko or however they want. I wonder, it might be just me who is trying to block that last image I don't want to see. Maybe. Your daughter makes a very cute model. Yep, she is very cute, and she knows it. Which is good. I mean, she's very shy, so she does not. Well, I asked her, like, is that okay to, upload your photos on the Instagram? And she said, well, it's okay. Well, she does not know probably how big my Instagram account has become. It's okay. It's not my thing. It was a lovely photo of your daughter that you shared on. Yes. I don't know how much she will be interested in those things, but let's see. I have no problem with her involving Sashiko, but I just don't force her to do it. If she wants to stitch, she can. If she wants to take over what I do, then I have to send her to Japan for like 10 years or so. Like take over is a different thing. So, but if she wants to just practice or enjoy that, then there are not a big problem at all. But let's see. I sometimes wonder if she's my daughter or not, because I mean she is my daughter. She came with my face out of my wife, so there's no it was very surprised. Like she had hair, she had my face, and that was very, very scary and happy moment, but very scary because that was my face. And it's kind of rare to have that. Anyway, that's too much information. But she has become very. She looks like Asian, but she has her mother's features as well, so it's very interesting. But she's more into like fashion. Yeah, she's into more like cosmetics. Like do 7 years old, like second grade kids do makeups recently? I have no idea what they're talking about. Like, Daddy, I need a makeup. Like, no, you do not. Probably like talk to mommy. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know. Makeup? No. I'm not really following anything. But yeah, she might be more on the Instagram or YouTube if she wants to do it. She's now into camera, she's now into filming. She's, 7 years old. She's very much interested in pretty much anything, so not stitching. She doesn't really care. Which is very, very good. I mean, I want her to care for the TV than stitching. If she if she choose to stitch over playing or TV or game Switch, Nintendo Switch, I'm a little bit worried about that. So yeah, like Julie wrote, many people advise me to sort of give her the interest in that. I don't even do that because she knows there are a lot of fabric scraps and there are needles and thread here all the time. So I just don't want her to go through the childhood I've been to. I had been through. So if she thinks that I'm just stitching, then that's the end of the story. Like but that's my hope. And then when she becomes 30 or 40, after let's say 30, 40 years later, I might not be here. And in that case, I want her to find somebody who knew me and then pass it down to her. It used to be, not it used to be. The Japanese believe, not the past tense. I think they believe strongly about the bloodline. Not any, like, less significant in the recent years, but at least when I was a child, firstborn male boy had a sort of responsibility to take over the family matters. So we care about family and family blood. I don't think we live in that kind of world anymore, so it does not have to be her. She's at the age where her hair and makeup seems to be interesting. Yeah, so I let her do that. And I think, Julie, you're lucky your daughter asked you to use your things to make dolls, and that's very lucky things to do. I mean, it's purely luck, I guess. I don't really block her from any thread or fabric. At the same time, I do not really push that too. It's if she likes it, that's good. If she doesn't like it, if she does not have interest in it, that's perfectly fine. iPad is probably better than stitching, and I need iPad to stitch too because I gotta watch Netflix as well. So it's good that she has a choice, and I really like to respect that choice. Same as language. Same as language. Like, we know that it's very important for her to be able to speak 4 languages if the parents can speak several languages, right? And many, many, many people advise us to try, and we decided to not do. We just decided to focus on one language, which is English. And many people around us say that that's a waste of that's sad, that's waste, that's but that's very ideal situation that they did not have probably COVID when they were younger. Probably they had a family around to depend on. They had a different situation. Probably they did not have. One could probably spend time with them, with the child. Everybody has a different situation, so we decided to not to teach or use any other language besides English in this family. We don't prohibit it, but we try to use the English only to communicate. And this kind of interesting thing is that I learned English when I did not speak any English before 19 years old. And my wife did not speak English until same as 19 or 18, and she speaks 3 languages fluently. And we both agree the importance of one mother language. Like, instead of having like 3 languages or 4 languages, especially if it's not related to each other, if it's like English, Spanish, those Latin language, probably it's not that big of a deal. But if it becomes to the Slavic language, Japanese language, English, those mixed languages, it's probably better for us to stick on one language until she gets interested in that. If she is interested in learning another language, that's a different story. We will of course teach her that. We will help her that. But yeah, that's like, everything's like a luck. Luck. We cannot control her. It's her life. Trust me, we tried our best to control her life, but she is already her one personality, so we cannot do anything. Well, we shouldn't do anything. Off topic, so answer when convenient. Is this the way Sashiko is written in Japanese? Yes, it is. There are 2 forms of alphabet characters used in Japan. One is kanji. What is the other? I understand. Well, Google that. I shouldn't be teaching you that. And it's not only 2. It's if you're talking alphabet, it's not kanji 2. Alphabet is 2. Yes, we have 2. Can I just say 2? Generally speaking, yes. 2 alphabet, which is katakana and hiragana, and kanji is almost unlimited. So you know, you might want to ask Google. Google has probably a better answer for that because there are so many people who are teaching that. I mean, you know, I don't mind. I don't mind talking about it here, but I don't want to give you the wrong answer. If you want to, hear from the Sashiko perspective, that's a different story. But yeah, the kanji Sashiko is correct. That's the attitude my parents had too, but I kind of resent them for it because it's so valuable to be exposed to your heritage language when you can still have them as native language. Oh, you resent? It's so different when you have to learn it later. Yeah, I understand it. But I think you shouldn't resent to that. It's their choice. And it's not really easy as a parent to force the kids to speak. Different case is that let's say if I marry to Japanese, that's a little different story because I can use Japanese in the family. But if the common language used in the family, like my wife and myself, is English, it is kind of we tried, of course we tried. It's kind of excluding the other parents from the conversation when they speak that language. And the mother and father talks in the one language. So it does not really, well, she kept asking the question for that. Like, why do you speak English to mom, and why do you speak to me in Japanese to me? Well, that's a very, very, very logical, good question. Well, I disagree with you for that. It's frustrating, kind of makes me mad that I think your parents had their own reason to sort of wait for that. I don't know how old you were, or even if you. I don't know how old you were when you felt that resentment, but if that was like 5 years old and they decided not to take that route, even if you ask them to teach, that's a probably different story. But if that's happened after, like, we became adult, like languages, like we can learn language at any age. That's really, I don't buy those, like, languages. I used to believe that a lot. Like, you have to learn the language when you were young. Like 3 years old, 2 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old. The younger the better, right? I kind of don't believe that anymore. Oh, of course, it is true. It is very true. It is much easier. Like brain is softer, so it is much easier to learn. I agree. At the same time, it's never too late to learn something, especially the language. Language, you don't need any skill. I mean, special skill. Sorry. I cannot be the soccer player from now. I'm 38, 39. It's too late. It's too late. I have even like a back pain, so I cannot even stand. But language is like, of course, many people have their own challenges. Some people can't remember things, or some people cannot pronounce those specific words. So everybody has different condition. But same as Sashiko, the physical requirement for language or even Sashiko are very, very minimum. So it's not too late. And I understand Lily-san's frustration too. But it's don't be upset to them. You know, I think your parents did their best, and it's great, but something important was lost. So you are learning that language and you feel like you're outsider because of the language? But are you... That's a very good point. Look, let's talk about my case, right? Like, my daughter will probably not consider herself as the Japanese, regardless if she likes Japan a lot. She has the Japanese heritage, but I do not. I mean, of course she can, but she will be always outsider, unfortunately, because she's not the Japanese. Like, she's like, anybody can be the Japanese if they want to be Japanese, right? Like, how do we define that? You know, the Japanese is very difficult. In my definition, in my understanding, if one lives in Japan for long enough to be able to speak Japanese and then understand their expectation in Japan, like, you know, customs, rituals, and culture, I consider them Japanese, regardless how they look or what kind of country they're born, or, you know. That, for me, that's the Japanese. So if they can speak to me in Japanese with the Japanese courtesy and Japanese expectation, I don't really distinguish them if they want to be considered as Japanese. My daughter, it has to have a very significant life change experience because her identity is very much American, and we are celebrating that. Like, we don't really deny that. So she's, you know, she's half. She has the mother of Jewish, so Jewish comes second, and Jewish American is probably her biggest identity she's gonna come into. But at the same time, she's the only one child we have. So if we stick on the bloodline, she's the one who is gonna take over everything I carry. So I understand the logical discussion that she should be able to speak or understand Japanese culture more. But it's probably my belief, like, the language can be very, like, those things can be learned very late in their life, and there's something more important than that. I know, I understand. I mean, I don't understand, but I can imagine the Lily-san's feeling of losing something important, but I think there are more important things than that. Sorry, I don't say this to judge your parenting or anything. I just wanted to say, yeah, I'm not. I didn't take it as a judgment. I also shared my honest feelings, so no hard feeling each way. The weird thing is that my dad also had the problem and resented his parents for the same thing, but this then did the same to me. Then that's a different story, yo. That's a different story. That's a different story. Like, That's a different story. It became a completely different story. If your father resented his parents to do that, and repeating that is a little different story. Like the baseline here is that I'm very grateful that I have a Japanese as my mother language, so I can make logics. I can think things in Japanese. I don't really think anything right now when I speak in Japanese in English, but at the same time, I have a very strong dependency to the Japanese language. So it's very, for me, like having one absolute language is much better than having several languages. I think my wife is the same too, although for my main language might be English at this moment. But if your father resented you, no, yeah, that's a little different. I have to take everything back. Third generation effect. Okay. All right. So for that, my daughter is the second generation. So if she does that same thing to her daughter, then I'll take that blames too. But she is the first generation. That's the case. She's the second generation. How do we define that? She is the daughter of the immigrant. So it's not. It's kind of sad. Not sad. It's kind of difficult, but she has to prove that she's American. She does not look, she has to prove that she's American, which is kind of sad, but that's the fate, that's the burden she brought with her. The other side of that burden is the so-called privilege that she can, she can experience the other culture very easily. But we all have different issues, and I hated my father when I was a child, and I understand that feeling too. It's just we gotta do what we like. It's the same as poker. We got a hand. We gotta deal with the hand we receive, and we sometimes get a very shitty hand. The third generation effect basically states that by the third generation in the country, the heritage language is completely died out of the family. Oh, that's probably that sounds right. Usually the first generation can communicate with the parents, and second generation can understand the grandparents but not talk to them. And the third generation gets no exposure at all. So I'm gonna be the first generation for that, I guess. Or my daughter is gonna be the first generation. Well, but I may be speaking Hebrew 10 years from now if things changed. If my daughter decided to learn Hebrew, and if they decided to change the family language to Hebrew, I may have to learn that. It's equal. My daughter and I are on the same line in terms of learning the language. Ay. Anyway. Anyway, but that's the thing. That's the thing about. I mean, I don't want to just kind of force emerge into what we have been talking about Sashiko, but each family has different condition, different situation, different ideas, different rules, different decisions, right? That's what defines Sashiko too. each family had different thing, different condition, different idea, different, and those are sometimes uncomfortable. We might disagree each other, we might not, like it. But there's no such a thing as the answer for those decisions. That's why I really do not like I said don't like it, but I'm gonna say I don't like the trend right now in Sashiko in English defining one answer as if that's the only answer. In today's case, it's very violent to say that if the parents can speak several languages, they have to teach the kids several languages. It is very recommended. Yes, I understand that, and I understand Lily-san's comment, and I did not take it as the judgment. So don't worry about it. But if one decided as the outsider, if you are inside, it's okay to discuss. But if the outsider decide that, like, if there's a person who says that although they do not speak the second language, saying that, well, you should teach your daughter the second language, that's a little too much, right? I have received those comments a lot. But that's sort of the good intention yet hurtful things to do. And I think that's what's happening in Sashiko right now. They mean well. But unfortunately, because they are not, well, they're jumping into the quick answers, they're sort of erasing something more important than what it is, what it can be. So, I have only recently been forced to label myself as white and not American, so good luck. They insisted my heritage for MRI. Well, that's a completely different another story. I was not thinking about those things for long time. It's a very wild assumption. Well, I probably shouldn't. Well, I shouldn't probably. Well, I'll think about it if I should say that. But there are not that many Japanese male in the United States, as long as I know. Like there are more Japanese female in the United States. And I kind of started getting why. And it was a very shameful feeling that I felt. And I wouldn't understand this if I didn't live in the US for 10 years. So it's quite comfortable to be in Japan as a Japanese male. And I think that's what we call privilege. And I did not know those labels that I was carrying. So it's very interesting. You have not been to California, Hawaii? Yeah, probably not. That's why. Well, yeah, that's a good point. But being Japanese man, I did not know how big of the comfortable I was carrying. when I was in Japan. And that's probably the label I am thinking about. I used to feel bad about not having family traditions, but then I now feel having family traditions. Yeah, I feel thankfully free from nostalgic feeling. So my point is, those are very, very, very personal thing, right? Those are very personal thing. So nobody should find the answer. Nobody should define the answer for them. I mean, there gotta be some recommendation or some advice or good thing. That's perfectly fine, but shouldn't be the answer. And that's the scary part of today's Sashiko, because many people who don't know anything about what they're talking about are defining the answers. That's a scary part. Those are very, very sensitive topics. And we can discuss, and we should discuss. Discussion is very good. But that discussion should be open-ended. It shouldn't aim to make the conclusion, because conclusion creates sort of winner and loser, and then loser will not have a place to express their feeling. So the goal is to just leave it open. And that's what I tried to say. That's what I tried to communicate in Sashiko as well. Like, I just don't know why they would like to follow somebody's definition for something that they don't know. It's so interesting. It's not even interesting, but actually, it's quite annoying. So please learn what Sashiko is by watching this live streaming of videos, reading the Instagram, and try to find your own Sashiko, and it's not that difficult. I mean, if they think that Sashiko is merely the technique or pattern, then they need answers to follow, but that's not what I'm trying to pass down. So yep, it comes back to being put in the box, putting the Sashiko in the box. Yes, and I think the Sashiko can be in a box, but the box should be made by somebody who knows what they're making. So the Sashiko might shape like a star shape, but many people are trying to put that star shape into one small square box. It's not gonna fit. So what do they have to do? Cut at the edge. Those 5 corners has to be gone because that does not fit the square box. Just make the square shape box, then it's gonna fit. If they can make those star shaped box to fit the Sashiko into the box, I'm gonna be perfectly fine or happy, or even I wanna be friend with them who makes those star shaped box. The problem is that they're trying to change the star shape to fit the box they have. That's the problem. It's the problem. I mean, everything has the box to go into. Just don't change the box, not the content. I have seen very fake Sashiko Boro labeled project on YouTube. No threat to you. I don't think it's even fake. It's just... It's one, probably. Well, I just didn't see that video, but I'm not really worried about it. Just annoying. And I don't think it's fake. It's just not even wrong. Shallow. No, not even shallow. Shallow, probably shallow is the... if we define the fake, then we have to define authentic truth, right? Like, what is the known fake? There's no fake, there's no authentic Sashiko neither, so it's kind of difficult to say fake because I have to sort of be prepared to say what is the opposite side of the fake. I can be prepared to say what is the opposite side of the shallow, which is deep, which is the content, which is, rich content, which I think what I'm doing is that. So it's just too shallow. And if they know what they're doing is shallow, that's perfectly fine. Like I probably keep saying in his message, and it was very shocking and very refreshing. I used to ask, why do you call it Sashiko, right? I was just curious why they use the name Sashiko for their project if they don't really understand Sashiko. And my question was, why do you call it Sashiko? And many people took as an accusation. So I changed my question to, what do you like about Sashiko? But before that, before I understood that, complexity of that question in English, even if I said I'm asking out of curiosity, many people took it as the accusation. Anyway, one person answered me that to the question, like, why do you name your project Sashiko? He said that, well, because I get more page view if I put that word in my post. And that was so refreshing to me. And that's a good shallowness, right? That's very shallow, but he knows that it's shallow and it's okay. We both agree that, that does that job. And I asked him, like, Sashiko means something else, and he said, yeah, but I don't care. And like, well, if you don't care, that's great. And does it hurt your feeling? Like, no. If you're using the word Sashiko for that specific purpose with understanding how shallow they are, that's perfectly fine. With me. Some people might disagree. So what I don't like is the attitude that they think they know enough already. That's the whole problem. They don't know enough, yet they consider themselves as that's gonna create issues. Everything else is not that big of a deal because it is moving thing. Moving thing? Yeah, the culture changes, so I'm not really saying like it shouldn't be completely different. So, for that matter, you don't have to worry about anything. Okay, I think it's about time to, like, I have a little bit of this much, so I will end Sashiko stitching after this much thread. So next week, Thursday, after this live streaming around this time, I will wrap it up the live streaming next week around this time, like 10 minutes, 15 minutes to the 10:30 Eastern time. And after that, we will have the Sashiko gathering in English, organized by Maiko-san, which I will just show the ta-da. I don't know if I'm gonna be this active. I may be just doing completely different thing. But anyway, there's gonna be another facilitator. Her name is Maiko, and she will facilitate this meeting gathering. And anybody is welcome as long as you like Sashiko and as long as you like Japanese, as long as you are willing to listen or talk about it. Like we don't wanna change the topic to other things, like, we don't want to talk other. The theme topic are gonna be focused on Sashiko and Japanese culture, but if you're okay with that, it's open to anybody. If you sign up last month on the Pram Studio website, or even if you joined that previous time, don't worry, you should receive the link from Michael next week sometimes. If you are new here and if you have not signed up, we made a kind of easier way to understand who is going to be there every month. So there's a link on the description right after today's date and topic and the description. There's a ticket to Sashiko English Gathering. That's the givebutter.com Sashiko Gathering. That's the ticket that you can get. It's free. You don't have to pay anything. It has the same vibe when people who corset. Yep. Sorry, I skipped your comment. But that's the gathering information. Again, I am not the one who organized this, so I might be completely absent. I will be there, but I might be like, this is not the best time for me. It's not a prime time for me, so I might be completely out of useless. But we will try to have those gathering we would like to offer it sometimes in different time zones. So that different time zones, we would like to offer this gathering in different times, so the different time zone people in different time zone can join. But for now, this is the easiest time for us to organize. So for that, it is next week. And what else? Everything, I think that's about it. If you're watching this as the archive, and if you have any questions about Sashiko, not the technique, more like a story-wise, please leave the comments so I can bring that question to the next time. And this always the same thing. If in order to keep this channel, the YouTube channel, in a healthy condition, if you could click the good button, that'd be very much helpful. Since I kind of started saying something very I don't really cover what I say anymore with the little oblert. How do you call that? I don't put my message in the fog. I say what I want to say. So there are people who are a big fan of me and then put the negative. So if the ratio is bad, the channel health is not good. So if you could put the good one, that'd be great. Question: do you know if Boro and Sashiko stitching started about the same time, or did Sashiko stitching come later? You might want to watch my webinar, which I can send you. Well, there gotta be check the follow-up email from the online class. I probably put the link to the webinar explaining that. If not, let me know. It's gonna be pretty long explanation, and I have to define each terms And it's a good question, but my webinars probably will make sense. The webinar I offered like last year or so. ありがとうございました。ありがとうございました。I don't see any dislikes here. It doesn't show. It's really interesting. Like the YouTube does not show the dislikes anymore. And well, I mean, those people are not here probably right now. But do you see the dislikes now? Like the regular videos, they don't really show it anymore. If you don't find it, just let me know. I'll send you a link. Or I'll add it to the follow-up page. Okay. So, yep, next week is the Sashiko gathering, and after that, I don't have any other plan for this October and November, so I will be back on the regular Thursday live streaming. Thank you so much for coming into the Sashiko. Yeah. So the no dislike button, but if you click this dislike button, it does not show the numbers of dislike. That's like how the YouTube changed the system or something. It's really interesting. But anyway, what was I gonna say? Yeah, so I will see you the next Thursday. Sashiko Gathering is the link to the Sashiko Gathering is on the description area. And what else? See, like my brain is completely fried. 10:30 is not a good time for me. Anyway, yeah, I will see you next Thursday. Thank you so much for coming and have a